European Commission calls. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a few minutes. So the accomplishments to date, we've already held a bilateral workshop with the EU and Brazil, and we generally hold these alongside very large conferences that are being held. So this was held in May in Rio de Janeiro alongside the IWT conference. And there's a report available at this website here. Then as I mentioned, we're in the process of putting together an international advisory group from all the countries. We're holding an EU-South Africa bilateral cooperation event on the 16th of August alongside ISSA, the Information Security Conference in Johannesburg. Then for EU-India, we're planning to hold it alongside the EU-India event in December, and there's also EU-India Spirit event quite close by this time as well. So, and we're also preparing for an annual forum and IAG meeting for the end of the year. So for this, we're recruiting the IAG members from the countries, and we're in the process of building the topics of interest with the countries. Then just some other related activities. We're involved quite heavily with the EU-India Spirit project, which you heard about in the first day of the conference. They have been looking at policy alignment between EU and India, and we've been part of their working groups, and we've had great collaboration with them, both on the EU and India side. We're also involved in the EU Future Internet Assembly, which is the EU's approach to bringing together research communities across the various domains who are working on the future internet. And also we have an involvement in the EU technology platforms, networked and electronic media, e-mobility, NESI, etc. So we're not starting from scratch between the EU and India because, as I mentioned, we've been working within the EU-India Spirit project, and we had a brainstorming session on the 1st of August in which we had a dedicated session on trust and security topics. So a number of these topics were already mentioned by the esteemed speakers today. And so, for example, protection against malware, when there's a heavy reliance on imported systems in the countries. So we were discussing, some approaches to guarantee protection at source, and is there a way to influence the manufacturing process to alleviate the possibilities. Trust, security, and privacy in the cloud we discussed this as a research topic for mutual collaboration, and there was some interesting discussions on the perspectives between the EU and India, whereas the EU are very heavily industry-driven, whereas in India it's very heavily societal-driven. But in terms of trust, security, and privacy, we were quite complementary that these topics must be addressed before the realization and accessibility for cloud computing, especially in rural areas. Then another potential topic was identity management. So, for example, India is quite strong with the UID, and the EU was working on a number of projects on privacy protecting ID management systems. And also we were discussing the future for biometric research. Can we work together on a low cost or less power consuming or less power intensive equipment providing the required accuracy for biometrics. And research within authentication is very strong in both India and the EU, and this was identified as a possible collaboration topic. Then there's a very strong societal push in both the EU and India. So in terms of trust, security, and privacy, as Professor Kay mentioned earlier, this is critically important to look at the balancing situations. So how do we put citizens in control of their data and their information? How can the technologies provide this control to the citizens? We need a strong link between social scientists and technologists in this research. How do we deal with the conflicts between the right to information, access to personal data, updating the data, and right to anonymity or the right to be forgotten, especially when we're talking about social networking and the cloud computing. Then looking at this balance between the strong security tools and the efficiency and effectiveness of the processes. So we discussed, we need more research on security with flexibility, where we can build cost-effective, tailor-made, and indigenous security projects that would compete not only for the country itself, but for the export market. And then, as our earlier speaker discussed, the risk management approaches to trust and security were identified as a topic for cooperation. So looking at the economics of security and privacy and the trade-offs between the risks and security, and what does it cost society when dealing with these. So for more information and to get involved, I invite you to contact me today and or afterwards. And I also have here my other partners who look after the various work packages. Professor Neeraj Suri is working with me very closely from Technical University Darmstadt in building the community of researchers and program management between the EU and India. And Professor Michelle Rigidel is looking at the helping take the topics and putting them into a document which we then can provide to the European Commission so that they can write their work programs. And Aliosa Pasic from ETAS in Spain is working on building the community and helping to run the events within the project. So I thank you for your time, and I enjoy meeting you afterwards.